Today, we're going deep on one of the most versatile characters in Chinese. This little guy is everywhere and has more tricks up its sleeve than you might think. In fact, it's the most common character in the whole language. But first, if you don't know me, well, ni hao. I'm Phil Crimmins, co-founder and CEO of Mandarin Blueprint. And after living in China for 11 years and seeing the broken Chinese language education system firsthand, my buddy Luke and I set out on a mission to detail the ultimate blueprint for Mandarin fluency. And one of those details is the Chinese character D, also pronounced D sometimes, and also pronounced D sometimes. And we'll go over all of it. So first, we'll kick things off with its most famous role of possession. Think mine, yours, his and hers, Gary's. It's all about staking your claim. But that's just the beginning, because next we'll use D to supercharge your descriptions. After all, we need to know how to call someone beautiful, right? And if you want to add some extra punch at the end of your sentences, D will help you emphasize just about anything with 是, 听, and 会, perfect for easily drawing attention to certain details. Plus, you'll learn how combining D with adjectives can turn phrases into nouns, cutting out unnecessary words and getting right to the point. This is really a less is more lesson. And by the way, for those of you who think I know about D, there's going to be stuff in this lesson that you probably didn't see before. So keep in mind that just because you think you might know the most common character in Chinese, you'll still get value out of this. Now, after that, it doesn't stop there. We're going to talk about how you can express confirmation of someone's assumption or suspicions with a slight change in pronunciation to D, giving you a great way to say indeed. And finally, we'll wrap things up by shifting to D, this slight tonal shift that turns D into a powerful tool for targeting and achieving goals. By the end of this presentation, you'll see just how much flexibility and finesse one character can add to your Chinese. So you ready? Let's unlock the full potential of D. And let's dive into one of the most common yet powerful usages, that of possession. This is what holds two nouns together. And think of it like saying my friend, or your hometown, or his time. It's such a simple word, yet it opens up so many possibilities for expressing relationships between people and places, people and things, or people and abstract concepts. Let's break it down with the different types of nouns. First, let's start with something easy. If you have noun 1 and noun 2 and you put D in between them, it means noun 1 possesses noun 2. For example, 我. Simple noun, simple pronoun, I or me. Now when you add D and you get 我的, now you have my or mine. Well, your what? My or my what? 朋友. That's another noun, friend. So 我的朋友 is my friend. So let's combine 朋友 with a few different nouns so you get the idea. 他是我的朋友，所以我很信任他. He's my friend, so I trust him. 我 me 的 my 朋友 friend. Easy enough, right? How about this one? 电影马上就要开始了，你的朋友还没到吗? The movie is about to start. Haven't your friends arrived yet? And so this is a good example of how you can use it with 你 as well. Obviously, you can combine any two nouns and just get the idea that it's that possession. So 你 is you, so 你的 is your. How about this one? 他在公司很受欢迎，似乎每个人都是他的好朋友. And this is great because it shows that you could actually add another descriptor before 朋友 and make it 好朋友. And it still is a possessive usage. 他的好朋友. And you'll see in this lesson, there's a lot of ways to add descriptions in, have little subtle ways of making things even more descriptive just by adding in a few extra adjectives, and D ends up being the glue that holds it all together. How about this one? 在美国，他的朋友不多，所以经常感到孤单. His friends are few in America, so he often feels lonely, right? So, 他的朋友. We had her friends, his friends, my friends, your friends. All of them work. But what if you want to say somebody who's a particular person? Well, one of my favorite names in Chinese is Gai Rui, because that's a way of saying Gary. And you'll notice that when Chinese people are speaking English, sometimes they'll say English names and you might sound like that's kind of a funny way. Well, that's because they have a transliteration of the name and they're thinking of it like that. So, 盖瑞的朋友就是我的朋友. 欢迎你以后常来我家玩. Right? So this is saying Gary's friends are my friends. And by the way, that little 就是 in there, great use of 就 to indicate exactly. You could just say 盖瑞的朋友是我的朋友, but it would have a little bit less emphasis. That idea of any friend of Gary is a friend of mine, that kind of feeling gets expressed with 就是 because it means exactly. So 盖瑞的朋友就是我的朋友. Any friend of Gary is a friend of mine. Now, sometimes it connects nouns with a place noun, like a 家乡. This is just a hometown. For example, 我的家乡在中国北京. 你的家乡在哪里? This might happen. Somebody might ask you this. They'll probably skip right to asking about where you're from, but, somebody might put this sentence forward. And suppose you're talking about your friend's hometown. You might say, 照片里就是他的家乡. 一个美国中部的小城市. This is her hometown, a small city in the middle of America. And there's that 就是 again. Interesting, right? So it just means exactly is her hometown. And by the way, this second half of the sentence has another example of a description. Now, this is the second usage we'll get to in a second, but 美国中部的小城市 is just a way of expressing what kind of a 小城市 is it. In fact, 城市 is a city or a town, and by saying 小城市, now we have a small town, and what kind of small town is it? Well, it's a 美国中部的小城市, somewhere in the middle of America, a small city in the middle of America. Now, it can also be used with abstractions. 时间 is kind of abstract, but you can still use it in the same way you do in English. 我的时间不多了，要尽快完成任务. I don't have much time, I have to finish the task as soon as possible. And so, in this case, it's just an abstract idea of the time that you have. 这周麦克会提前开始工作，这样你的时间就充裕了. Mike will start work early this week, which will give you plenty of time. That's a great word, by the way, 充裕. I guess 充, I always think of it as like 充电 is the word you use for charging up a phone. So it's like fully charged and fully like free, 充裕. So that's a way of describing your time as being plenty. And so again, we're talking once again about 你的时间. So this is an abstract idea, and yet you can still possess it. 真正喜欢你的人再忙也会把他的时间和你分享. So this has a couple of things in it. The first part of the sentence, 真正喜欢你的人, that part is actually a description, and again, we'll get to that in the second part. But the second half is 他的时间, and that is, of course, the abstraction. But what a cool structure this is. 再忙, so that means even if you were more busy, 也会 also will. So 再忙也会 is a way of saying that no matter how busy he is, the person who truly likes you, no matter how busy that person is, they will take their time, 把他的时间, and with you share it, 和你分享. So that's a little bit of a different type of grammatical structure than you would have in English, but it all makes sense and it's kind of poetic. 再忙也会把他的时间和你分享. Right? It's just like this type of person, if they really like you, they will definitely, no matter how busy they are, they will still take their time and share it with you. And I think that's quite beautiful. We'll do one more in the abstract category. 他的时间很紧张，每天的行程都安排不过来. Her time is so tight that she doesn't even know how to arrange her daily schedule. So again, 她的时间, her time. And by the way, you can describe 时间 as 紧张. We normally think of 紧张 as being like the state of anxiety, right? Just being nervous or anxious. But 时间 can also be kind of nervous or anxious. This means you have a tight schedule, right? And 紧张 紧means tight. So 紧张, it's like, yeah, that totally is a good way to describe when you don't have much time. And so the way that this sentence ends, 安排不过来, I love that because when you say 安排不过来, that means that even trying to plan doesn't work. It won't come to you trying to plan. I like that. So you'll see these are great ways to utilize Chinese in a way that's how people actually speak. A lot of times with Chinese courses, there's a bit too much emphasis on like a perfect formal way to say it, but a lot of times this is how people will actually say something. So there you have the possession usage of 的, and it is by far the most common, but the next up, we're turning up the heat. Because what if you want to describe someone as stunningly beautiful or fiercely intelligent? Well, this use of 的 will definitely have you covered. I love this section. So we have an adjective like 漂亮. This is a general word for beautiful. It tends to be used in application to people. You tend to describe people this way. So if I say 漂亮的, then whatever comes after it, it's saying that thing is beautiful. For example, 苏珊娜是一个漂亮的小姑娘. So this would be Suzanne is a pretty little girl. So your friend brings over her daughter Suzanne. You could describe her this way to be complimentary. Or how about this one? 我在华盛顿的家有一个很大的院子. Okay, so 院子 is a yard. So if you took out 很大的, the sentence still works. 我在华盛顿的家有一个院子. I have a yard at my house in Washington. That could be a sentence someone says, because maybe in China they don't have a yard. But if you want to then take 院子 and add more descriptors, you can just say 很大的院子. How about this one? 聪明的人从来不抱怨，只是默默努力. Smart people never complain, just silently work hard. So you wouldn't just say 人从来不抱怨, because then it's like, what, people never complain? Come on. But by saying 聪明的人, now you know, okay, we're saying smart people. We're cordoning off this whole population of people into just the smart ones. 聪明的人. So very useful. I like this usage of how you can describe something and therefore cordon off that section of it. Now, sometimes you will take two adjectives together and that will emphasize the description a bit more. So 红 means red and 红 also means red. So if you say 红红的, then whatever comes before it is definitely red, but you're kind of adding a little bit of extra emphasis. For example, 客厅的果盘里装满了红红的苹果. The fruit bowl in the living room is full of red apples. So 红红的苹果. You're just being kind of poetic a little bit when you say it like this. It's just, they're very red. They're extra red. 红红的苹果. But it doesn't necessarily have to be single character adjectives. For example, 杰克是一个瘦高的男孩. So even though 瘦高 is a way of describing something, you can just say it twice to give an extra emphasis. 瘦 is thin and 高 is tall. So when you say 瘦高, it's just a way of quickly saying tall and thin. And by saying it twice, you're really emphasizing it. 他的眼睛亮亮的，一下子就把我吸引了. His eyes were so bright, and I was immediately attracted to him. So you can see how this is a way to, once again, emphasize the brightness of his eyes, the way that they shine, like, ooh, 亮亮的. This is a really useful one. You'll see that used a lot when people are describing someone's look. And so if somebody has that little glint in their eye, we'll call that 亮. And if you want to emphasize it, 亮亮的. Now, also, you can say a phrase before 的. For example, 问, that means to ask. So that's a simple verb. And then 问的, it's like, well, what was asked? And often it's referring to 问的问题. So what question was asked? The question asked. This is kind of hard to understand in this context, but it'll be easy when you see it in a sentence. 老师，刚才问的问题，你们都听懂了吗? Did you understand the questions the teacher asked? So 刚才问的问题 just asked. 老师刚才问的问题. This is all a description of 问题. 问的问题 is a phrase because you're saying the asked questions. But then you can just add more in front of it to give them further descriptions of what type of 问题 it was. 老师刚才问的问题. And then you just have the subject there, you ask a question about it from there. So this is a great way to use descriptions. Let's keep going. I like this one a lot. It really gets across the idea that you can just keep adding things. So we have 丽莎提出的这个方案很实用，我们可以用起来. The scheme proposed by Lisa is efficient, useful, practical. We can use it. So we have a 方案, right? That's a plan. It's usually a plan in the context of like a work plan, or perhaps to plan for, you might give somebody a sales page for a product that you're selling and give them the 方案 of how you'll deliver their service, right? That's kind of 方案, right? But it's not just any 方案. It's 这个方案. It's this plan. And it's not just this plan. It's the plan that was brought up by someone. 提出的这个方案. But it wasn't just anyone, it was 丽莎提出的这个方案, right? So it was Lisa's plan that she brought up. This plan that Lisa brought up, right? You keep adding stuff on, and then what's cool is that you're then continuing to describe it after. So look at this sentence. It's all about 方案, because even after we say 很实用, so very or is practical or is efficient. And I love that. So we can see that when you have this description tool in your back pocket, you can take almost anything and keep adding stuff to make it even clearer what you mean. Another example. 我妈妈烤的面包很好吃，欢迎你们都来尝尝。The bread my mother bakes is delicious. You are all welcome to try it. Well, here we have 面包, right? Or we have 烤的面包, baked bread. Or we have mom's baked bread, 妈妈烤的面包. Or we have my mom's baked bread, 我妈妈烤的面包. And then we can go describe it after we've already described it by saying 很好吃, right? The bread is very delicious. Not just any bread, the baked bread. Not just any baked bread. The mom's baked bread. Not just any mom's baked bread, my mom's baked bread. So it's quite cool how you can just keep tacking things on, and by tacking them on, you can make your descriptions far more powerful. So consider this in your immersion. Remember, and I always remind people of this with any kind of grammar point like this, it's all about consumption. It's noticing things while you're consuming. And boy, does this apply with 的. It's the most common character in the language, right? So you will see it all the time when you're reading, when you're taking in your TV or your movies or your novels. It will come up. And so when you see this, the point is not to think that by taking this supplemental video and learning from it, that you are successfully acquiring this character. No, you haven't acquired it yet. What I've done is given you a tool to notice it in your consumption. A supplement can never replace consumption, just like a nutritional supplement can't replace eating. So just remember that as we move forward, but I hope that this makes it easier for you to see it. Now, have you ever wanted to make your point stand out? Well, this chapter is all about using 的 with 是, 请, and 会at the end of a sentence, or I should say that 的 is at the end of the sentence, to pack an extra punch. It tends to draw eyes and ears to what matters most. It's either emphasizing a detail or saying that something is quite something else or that it's certain to happen. So adding 的 to the end of the sentence. I remember my buddy James, who's best man at my wedding. I was best man at his wedding. He rules. He said to me one day in Chengdu when we were both learning, he was like, I love to add 的 at the end of a sentence. It just feels like it really ends it quite well. And obviously that was a very emotional way of thinking about it. But it's true. It's like, it's how it feels when you're using it. So let's look at this one. 请, 的. So whatever you put between 请 and 的 is just saying quite that thing. If you say he is happy, and then you say 挺的, it's like he's quite happy. It's one step above is and a step below very. It's kind of the mid-level degree indicator. So 这个会议室挺大的. This conference room is quite large. What a big room this is. So when you see a conference room like that and you say, okay, it's not the largest, but, you know, 挺大的. It's quite large. That's how you would use 挺 plus adjective plus 的. 我现在的工作挺好的，工资高，时间也灵活。My current job is quite good. It pays well and has flexible hours. So everything surrounding 挺好的 is describing, you know, why the person thinks this way. But they're not saying it's the greatest job in the world. They're saying it's quite good. 任务挺多的，我们可能做不完。There's quite a lot of work to do. We may not be able to finish at all. And by the way, you see that 做不完 there at the end? That means unable to finish. So 做完 means to do and finish, so that's a resultative complement. 做 is do, 完 is finish, so if you 做完, it's finished. But if you 做不完, that means it's unable to be finished. And it's probably because the 任务挺多的, the tasks are quite a lot. Now, 是 plus 的 is a fantastic description. This is where you emphasize a detail, and it's usually about the past. And I'll talk more about this when we have a presentation on 是. But for now, suffice to say that whatever goes between 是 and 的 is the detail you're trying to draw attention to in some manner. 虽然我是美国人，但我是在澳大利亚出生的。Although I am American, I was actually born in Australia. So the emphasis here is on in Australia born. 在澳大利亚出生. And by having that between 是 and 的, you're drawing the listener's attention to that point. How about this one? 我是昨天晚上把邮件发给你的. So this is an email, and people probably have said this type of thing all the time, right? You know, you're trying to say, I sent you that email. So in this case, what they're emphasizing that it was last night that I sent the email to you. But if you just changed it to 昨天晚上是我把邮件发给你的, then that would mean last night it was me that sent the email to you. See how the difference is there? You just move around the sentence a little bit and you're emphasizing a different detail. So maybe you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, I really loved the email that you sent me last night. That was so nice. And the person they're talking to looks weird and you're like, hey, no. 昨天晚上是我把邮件发给你的. Right? So it's like that would be the point you want to emphasize there. And again, I'll get more into this when we cover 是, but that's the basic idea. How about this one? 我的车坏掉了，所以我今天是打车来上班的. That's emphasizing that you came by taxi today to go to work. Naturally, you set it up by pointing out that your car broke down, but the emphasized detail here is 打车来上班，是打车来上班的. That makes it much clearer that that's the point you're emphasizing. Now, what about 会 plus 的? Well, we've talked about how 会 can mean will, as in like I will do something, and that it's a little bit less intense than 要. It's a little bit less certain. But if you add 的 to the end of the sentence, the certainty comes back. 我会还你钱的. I'll certainly pay you back. So in the sense that it's not necessarily a set time that this might happen, 会 feels a little bit better than 要, but it's also adding an extra sense of certainty in your language, which is probably what you would want to do to somebody who's loaning you money, right? So make it very clear. 我会还你钱的. And this is that thing that James is saying about it. Like it really adds that punch at the end. 别担心，我会替你转告他的. Don't worry, I'll certainly tell her for you. And I like that because this uses a couple of words I really like. 替 means to substitute, replace. It's like for you, in place of you. So 替你, in place of you, 转告. So 转 means to transfer, and 告 means to say. Like if you say 我告诉你, it's saying I'm telling you. So transfer the telling to her. So I'll for you, 替你, transfer the telling, 转告, to her. 她. And by putting 会 and 的 around it, you're indicating the certainty of that happening. So pretty cool, right? You can absolutely use these in your day-to-day life pretty soon. How about this one? 你的建议我们会考虑的. We'll consider your suggestion. So 会考虑的. This is a way of kind of, it sort of feels like you're kind of slagging someone off here, just like, whatever. Yeah, we'll think about it. But in this case, by saying 会考虑的, that adds a level of certainty to it. So I like this sentence because it gets across the point that it's like you can hear somebody say like, yes, we'll consider your suggestion. But if you say 你的建议我们会考虑的, then it feels more certain, it feels more respectful. So there we showed how you can use 挺, 是, and 会 with 的 to either draw attention to something, indicate that something is quite something else, or add certainty. Now, what I'd like to do is talk about this very cool way to label something. Sometimes less is more, especially when you want to turn a whole phrase into a single powerful noun. For real. Let's get into how to use this usage of 的 to make your language sharper and more to the point. So you could have an adjective and you add 的, and it means the label of anything that fits into that adjective. Much easier to show in an example. So let's look at this. 护肤品我只买贵的. For skincare products, I only buy the expensive ones. 贵的. So what is left out there? Well, it's 护肤品, but you don't need to say it again because the subject has already been established. So 我只买贵的护肤品, the extra 护肤品 is unnecessary, and so you can just say 我只买贵的. It's a label for the expensive skincare products. And because the context is clear, you don't have to get any further detail, and therefore you can speak more efficiently. And by the way, I love 护肤品. Defend skin products. That's what skincare products are. 妈妈送的礼物肯定是最好的. What's left out there? Well, 礼物, right? So 最好的礼物. You don't need to say it again because it's already been established. Now, you might be thinking, well, if they say it earlier in the sentence, is this really saving time? But you could be in a situation where the context is clearer. If all we have is a sentence on screen, then yeah, we're going to need to establish something so that we know 最好的, what it refers to. But maybe you're just in a conversation that's been going for a while and you're referring back to something that was said 3 paragraphs ago in the conversation, if it were transcribed. Or you're just in some external environment where things are clear, and this allows you to get your point across without having to have so many words said. So look out for this. How about this? 那2个人里高个子的昨天不小心把你的花瓶打碎了. I love this because what you're doing is you're looking over there and you're saying 那2个人里. So amongst those two, 高个子的, the tall one, was the one who yesterday broke your flower pot, your flower vase, right? And I like how you can do this in Chinese. You can kind of establish a set of things that you're talking about. And then once you've done that, you can then describe it without having to say anything after 的. 那2个人里. All right, we know what we're talking about. 高个子的, the tall one of the two people that we're looking at, but you don't need to add it a second time. So this is what I mean by you can label something and then say much less. Now, you can even do this with a full phrase. For example, 我父亲是教书的. My father is a teacher. 教书的. That is not the word for teacher. It's the word for teach. It's like a verb. 教书 is a verb, but when you say 教书的, that refers to the person who does that thing in this context. So you don't have to say 我父亲是个老师. That would be fine, but you instead frame it as what he does. And therefore you have the phrase plus 的. And you could also say, what is left out here? 我父亲是教书的人, probably. It's like 教书的老师. Right, would be another way you could say it. That'd be, again, it's like a teacher. It feels kind of superfluous, right? So they just say 是教书的, right? My father is a teacher. And even though it translates as my father is a teacher, you could say, if you wanted to translate it literally, it's like my father is the teach books kind of thing. It's like for lack of a better term. Like Chinese is very contextual and it is all about finding a quick label for something. 我父亲是教书的. 我饿了，家里有什么好吃的? I'm hungry. What's good at home? What good food is at home? What is the missing piece here? Well, it's 好吃的食物. 食物 is the general word for food, but you don't need to say that. You can just say 好吃的. 有什么好吃的? It gets across the idea that what we're talking about, the good food here, the things that are good to eat, they must be here, and we don't need to say what those things are because the description already gets across the phrase. So you're essentially turning what would be a noun phrase 好吃的食物 into just 好吃的. It's pretty cool, right? How about this one? 老板刚才交代你的，你别忘了. Don't forget the thing the boss just told you. 交代你的. So 交代 is like the task that was granted to you. It was handed over to you and made for you to represent it. So 交 means to hand over in this context, and 代 means to represent. So the thing I've handed over to you to represent or, take care of. What's implicated here is that there was a thing. There's some detail to that. There's some detail to what they told you to do. Maybe they told you to fill out this spreadsheet and put in all the numbers for this recent report or something like that. But you don't need to say all that. You can just say 交代你的. Way easier. And so this is how you can take a whole phrase and turn it into just quick point about with 的 and leave out so many details. So that's a smart way to label someone or something using 的. And that covers the grammatical ways to use de. But there are a couple of word forms, and in this case, when you use 的确, you'll use it to affirm someone's existing assumption or suspicion, and in this case, it's pronounced di. And really, this is the only word, 的确, indeed, that you'll use in this context. Now, sometimes this character is pronounced di in proper nouns. For example, there's an appliance company in China called Meidi, and they make refrigerators and stuff. And so you'll see the character Mei, like as in beautiful, and this character, and it is pronounced Meidi. But when it comes to words that aren't proper nouns, it's pretty much this. This is the word you'll use. And so therefore, if you can just remember that this is the one context in which you'll pronounce it di, then you're good. So how do you use it though? Well, let's look at this. 我的确不知道他昨天没来上班. I indeed didn't know he didn't come to work yesterday. And here's the point that you want to emphasize here. You would say this if someone assumed or suspected that you didn't know that he didn't come to work yesterday, and you're confirming that by saying 的确. 我的确不知道他昨天没来上班. Right? So that makes it clear that the person you're talking to, what you're doing is confirming it. You wouldn't just go up to somebody and say 的确 without there being a previous context. I always will remember You Lao Shi, the famous You Lao Shi. I've talked about him a million times on this channel. I one time was saying to him, can we meet for a thesis advisor meeting today? I know you're probably too busy, so but let me know. And he said, 我的确很忙. Right? So unfortunately, I am indeed quite busy, so I can't do it today. Right? So that was an example of he needed me to give him that context before 的确 made sense. 他的确是个很出色的艺术家. He's indeed an excellent artist. So probably somebody's being like, don't you think this guy is such a good artist? Or maybe you were talking all day about the art show you're going to, and then you're chatting with the person who's seeing the art, and they say, 他的确是个很出色的艺术家. He's indeed an excellent artist. So you see how you can use it in this context and make it very clear that you're confirming what was previously assumed. You can even just start off a sentence this way. Again, there needs to be some context, but start off a sentence this way. 的确他为赢得这场比赛付出了很多努力. Indeed, she put a lot of effort into winning the game, right? So this could be a response to somebody just pointing out that what a great performance that she had. So this is the context in which you'll use 的确, and it's really the only major instance in where you need to use 的 in anything that's not a proper noun. I'll just mention though, if you do see this character in a proper noun of some kind, maybe it's a city name, maybe it's the name of a brand, it's possible that it's pronounced di, so just look out for that. Now there's still one more pronunciation, which is to di, and in this case, it's an essential character for goal setting and pinpointing targets. This is where you take aim and achieve, get ready to focus your Mandarin like never before with words like 目的, purpose, and 目的地, destination. And to be honest, once again, these are really only the two words that you're going to use. I'm not saying that there's literally no other words in the whole Chinese language where this character is pronounced di, but the words at any frequency are purpose and destination, 目的 and 目的地. So let's take a look at 目的. 我来美国的目的是找到一个好工作. My purpose, 目的, it's my eye target, because when de is pronounced di, it means target. So the target of your eye is your purpose, your goal, right? My purpose for coming to the US was to find a good job. How about this one? 他给客户送礼物的目的不言而喻. The purpose of his sending gifts to clients is obvious, right? So here we're once again getting across 目的, and I like this 成语 at the end, the idiom at the end, 不言而喻. That means you don't even need to say it and you know it. 喻 is like you internalize something, so no words, 不言而喻. And when you use 而 in this context, it kind of just means like it follows from, right? So no words and follows from understanding. So it's obvious. It's a way of saying it's obvious. And so kind of intelligent way of saying it's obvious. It's like you could say 很难相信, which would mean very hard to believe. Or you could say 不可思议, which is the same thing, but if you say the 成语 version, the idiom version, Chinese people will be very impressed. So if you ever want to get across the point of obvious, you could say 不言而喻. So there's 目的. Now, if you have a 目的地, then that's your destination, your purpose land or your purpose location, okay? So let's take a look at this sentence. 我们计划在周日前往目的地，然后待上2天1夜。We plan to head to our destination before Sunday and stay for 2 days and 1 night. So this just shows you have a destination of some kind. It's the target of your eye place. So it's pretty easy to understand. If you know 目的 is purpose and your purpose place, well, that's obviously your destination. Very useful to have that word in mind when you're talking to, say, a taxi driver. And so today we've covered the mighty de, the most common character in Chinese. And remember, it starts with possession, mine, yours, his, and hers, and then levels up to modifying nouns with vivid descriptions. We've seen how de can add emphasis with shi, qing, and hui, and how combining it with adjectives can simplify your speech. And don't forget the tonal twist to di for expressing confirmation, and really we only really use that with 的确. And finally, how di helps you to hit those targets and goals. So master these 6 usages, and you'll see how this tiny character can massively elevate your Chinese game. So keep practicing and let de work its magic in your conversations. And for those of you watching live, we'll have 30 minutes of Q&A next. And if you're catching this on YouTube and you're feeling like you missed out on the live action, don't worry, we've got you covered. Join our free community and be a part of the next live event where you can ask your burning questions, get direct answers, and interact with us and other dedicated Mandarin learners in real time. The link is in the description below, so jump in and let's keep leveling up your Chinese skills together. 感激不尽，再见。